The evacuation ship Nova Spirit carried 10,000 refugees in its belly. Most of them did not know that death was coming for them. They sat in crowded chambers below the main decks, sleeping or staring at nothing. Children cried. Old people prayed to gods they no longer believed in. Families held each other and tried not to think about the colonies they had lost. Commander Kayla Harris stood on the observation deck and watched space burn. 3 enemy warships hunted the refugee fleet like wolves chasing a wounded animal. The ships were massive, covered in weapons and armor that no civilian vessel could fight against. The Void Devourers did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They only destroyed. Kayla was human, though few of the refugees knew what that meant. Humans were a young species in galactic affairs, only 50 years into space travel. Most alien races saw them as children playing with toys they did not understand. But Kayla had learned that humans had something that some aliens lacked. Humans had the ability to stay calm when everything was burning. Humans had the ability to keep thinking when terror should have stopped their minds. The captain of the Nova Spirit was a Krell named Vorn. He was tall and gray, with 4 arms and eyes that saw into the infrared spectrum. He had commanded ships for 300 years, and he had never felt fear like this. His ship was built for carrying cargo, not for fighting. The shields would last maybe 2 more hours. The fuel would last 3, and the enemy ships would reach them in 1 hour and 40 minutes. "We should stop running," Vorn said to Kayla. His voice was low and hollow. "We should let them catch us. Perhaps mercy exists somewhere in those ships." Kayla did not answer right away. She was looking at the star charts, trying to think like a human. Humans thought in straight lines. Humans looked for solutions that other species overlooked. But Kayla was beginning to understand that even human thinking could not fix this problem. They were too far from the Galactic Council military forces. No rescue was coming. No miracle would save 10,000 lives today. "We run," Kayla said finally. "We keep the engines burning until they stop burning. That is all we can do." The tactical display showed the enemy ships getting closer. They did not fire yet. They were herding the refugee fleet like shepherds herding sheep toward a pen. They wanted to trap the Nova Spirit and the other ships together. They wanted to surround and destroy everything in one massive attack. It was efficient. It was brutal. It was what Kayla expected from beings called the Void Devourers. Below the observation deck, in a small room, a girl held her mother's hand. The girl's name was Sophie, and she was 8 years old. Her mother was dying. A sickness had taken her slowly over the past month, and there was no medicine left to give her. The girl did not know about the ships hunting them. She only knew that her mother was leaving her, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Sophie's mother squeezed her hand. "Be brave, my daughter. Be strong like I taught you." Sophie nodded, but she did not feel brave. She felt small and lost and terrified. She wanted to ask her mother what would happen to her when her mother was gone. She wanted to ask if her mother would wait for her somewhere. But she did not ask because she was afraid of the answers in the engineering section. The chief engineer, Dalton Cross, watched the power output gauges. His ship was dying. The engines were old. They had been pushed beyond their design limits. Every second they ran pushed them closer to total failure. Dalton had been an engineer for 30 years. He had never felt so powerless. The alert sounded again. The enemy ships were now 90 minutes away. 90 minutes, and then the attack would come. The Nova Spirit's captain made an announcement to the crew. He told them they were doing their duty. He told them they were saving lives by running. He did not tell them what they all knew. He did not tell them that running was just delaying death. Kayla moved through the ship, checking on people. She looked at the families. She looked at the fear on their faces. She thought about Earth, her homeworld. She thought about how humans had pulled themselves out of the dirt and reached for the stars. She thought about how humans had learned to survive in a universe that wanted them dead. The sensor officer, a young Krell named Solus, turned from his station. "Commander, I am picking up a signal from deep space. It is faint, but it is there." Everyone on the observation deck turned to look at the sensor station. "What kind of signal?" asked Vorn. "I do not know, sir. It is using a pattern I do not recognize. But it is moving toward us. It is moving fast." The star chart updated. A new contact appeared. It was coming from the opposite direction from the Void Devourers. It was coming from the black empty space that lay beyond known worlds. "Distance?" asked Kayla. 40 minutes away at current speed," said Solus. "But sir, there is something else. The signature matches human technology." The observation deck fell silent. A human ship. A single human warship was moving toward them through the void. It was old, according to the sensor readings. It was small compared to the Void Devourer vessels. It should have been insignificant, but it was coming. Kayla felt something move inside her chest. It was not hope, because hope was dangerous. But it was something close to hope. Something like the feeling a human gets when they are drowning, and they see a hand reaching down from above. The human ship moved through space without slowing. Its engines burned bright. Its weapon systems came online, and it set a direct course toward the 3 Void Devourer warships. Captain Vorn watched the data on his display. "What is it doing?" he whispered. Kayla understood. She understood because she was human, and humans did not run away from danger when others were suffering. Humans did the opposite. Humans ran toward the burning building. Humans jumped in front of the bullet meant for someone else. "It is coming to fight," Kayla said quietly. The human warship pushed through the void like a knife cutting through darkness. And on the bridge of that ship, a captain made a choice that would change everything. Captain Aaron Mitchell sat in the command chair of the USS Vuller, and his mind was moving fast. He was 43 years old, with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too much of space. He had been commanding ships for 12 years, and he had learned that the best decisions came from staying calm when everything was screaming. The Valor was a destroyer-class warship. It was not new. The ship had served for 30 years, and it showed its age in every piece of metal and every system that sometimes failed at the wrong moment. The hull was scratched and dented from 100 different missions. But the crew loved this ship, and the crew would follow Captain Mitchell into hell itself if he asked them to. When the distress signal had come through the communication array, Mitchell had been sitting alone in his quarters, reading reports from the last supply station. The signal was old and weak, stretched thin across thousands of light years. Most captains would have marked it in a log and continued on their patrol. Mitchell had stood up, walked to the bridge, and ordered a new heading. His first officer, Lieutenant Maria Chen, had questioned the order. "Captain, that signal is not in our operational zone. Command did not assign us to that sector." Mitchell had looked at her calmly. "Command did not assign us to be useless either. Set course for that signal." Maria was brilliant and professional. She was also young enough to still believe that orders mattered more than doing what was right. But she had set the course without further argument. That was what Mitchell's crew did. They questioned, and then they obeyed. For 3 weeks, the Valor had chased that signal across the void. The crew had been patient. Mitchell had been patient. And when the distress signal had become clear, when they had seen the refugee ships being hunted, Mitchell had not hesitated. He had looked at his weapons officer, Sergeant Frank Holloway, and had given a simple order. "Weapons hot. All systems combat ready." Holloway was a soldier, not a sailor. He had come from Earth's military, and he brought that mentality to space warfare. He nodded and began loading the Valor's weapons. The ship had 12 missile launchers and 4 railgun turrets. Not much by galactic standards, but in the hands of a human crew, they were enough to cause problems. The chief engineer, Linda Ross, came on the intercom from her station deep in the engine section. "Captain, I am seeing significant power draw on the weapon systems. What are you doing up there?" "We are going to fight, Linda," said Mitchell. "Push the engines to 80%. We will need the power." There was a pause. Linda Ross was a woman who had spent 20 years building, maintaining, and protecting the ships she served on. She treated the Valor like it was her child. She knew what it could do and what it could not do. 80% will push the engines into dangerous territory, she said. The cooling systems will strain. "I know," said Mitchell. "Do it anyway." The Valor accelerated. The refugee ships appeared on the tactical display. Mitchell could see their heat signatures, their fading shields, their desperate attempt to keep running. He could see the 3 Void Devourer warships closing in like predators that had tasted blood. Mitchell opened a communication channel to the refugee ship. He waited for someone to answer. When a voice came back, it was female and human and surprised. "This is the Nova Spirit." "Who is this?" "USS Valor, Earth Defense Fleet," said Mitchell. "I am Captain Aaron Mitchell. I need you to give me everything you can about those 3 ships approaching your position. Speed, power output, weapon configuration, everything." The human woman gave him information in quick, clear sentences. She was trained, or at least she had learned how to think in a crisis. Mitchell listened and understood what he was looking at. The 3 enemy ships were each 5 times larger than his own vessel. Each one carried weapons that could punch through the Valor's armor like it was paper. The tactical situation was impossible. Mitchell did what every human captain did when facing an impossible situation. He ignored the statistics and made a decision. "Nova Spirit, I am coming to position myself between you and those enemy ships. When I tell you to run, you run. You do not stop. You do not look back. You jump to hyperspace and you keep jumping until you reach safe space. Do you understand?" "I understand," said the woman. Her name was Kayla. She was human. Of course she was. Of course the universe had placed another human in this moment. "Thank you, Captain." Mitchell did not answer. There was no time for thanks or for thinking about what was about to happen. The Valor moved through space like a knife cutting through silk. The enemy ships had detected it now. They would be taking measure of the threat. They would be calculating that this small human vessel was nothing to worry about. Mitchell activated the communication system again. He broadcast on all frequencies. His voice went out across the void, reaching the 3 Void Devourer warships. "This is Captain Aaron Mitchell of the human warship Valor. You are in violation of Krull Confederation space. You are attacking civilian ships under Confederation protection. You will stand down your weapons and change your course, or I will make you stand down." The response came back in a harsh, grating language that the Valor's translation computer rendered into harsh English words. "Human vessel, you are outmatched. Depart this space immediately, or we will destroy you." Mitchell smiled, not because he thought he could win. He smiled because he was finally doing what he was supposed to do. He was standing between the hunters and the prey. "Negative," said Mitchell. "Sergeant Holloway, lock all weapons on the lead ship. When I give the order, you fire everything we have." The Valor moved into position. The 3 Void Devourer warships turned their weapons toward the small human insect that dared to challenge them. And Captain Aaron Mitchell prepared his crew for the fight that would define everything. The battle began with light and fire and the sound of alarms. Screaming through the USS Valor. The first volley from the Void Devourers came like thunder. Weapons that had been designed to crack planets opened fire on a small human destroyer. The Valor's shields flared brilliant white as the energy hit them. The ship shook, and every human on board felt their bones rattle. Captain Mitchell held tight to his command chair. "Report," he said. Lieutenant Maria Chun's voice came back steady. "Shields at 70%. Port side armor taking damage. Structural integrity still holding." "Return fire," said Mitchell. "All weapons. Target the lead ship." The Valor's railguns spoke with thunder. Missiles streaked out from the launcher tubes. The human weapons were older than the Void Devourer ships, but they were accurate. The first missile hit the lead enemy ship's shield and detonated in a spray of white light. One of the railgun shots punched through the shield and struck armor. The Void Devourer warship banked away, adjusting course. In the engine room, Linda Ross was working miracles. The Valor was running at 90% now, pushing beyond safe limits. The cooling systems were straining. The power core was glowing hot enough to make the instruments hard to read. But the engines were singing, pushing the old ship faster and harder than it had moved in years. "Captain, I cannot hold this power output for long," Linda said over the intercom. "Hold it as long as you can," said Mitchell. "That is all I ask." The Valor twisted and turned through space like a dancer. Mitchell was flying by instinct, making moves that no alien pilot would expect. Most large warships flew in straight lines or slow arcs. They were too big and too heavy to move with speed. But Mitchell flew the Valor like a fighter, rolling and spinning, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to lock weapons. Sergeant Frank Holloway was firing with purpose. Each shot was calculated. The railguns could only fire once every 5 seconds. The missiles took time to reload. Holloway was making every shot count, placing damage where it would hurt the most. The Void Devourers had more firepower, but humans had something else. Humans had the ability to think while things were burning. Second volley hit the Valor. The shields failed on the starboard side. A railgun beam punched through the outer hull and tore through a cargo section. Alarms screamed. Red lights painted the bridge in blood color. "Starboard structural damage," shouted Chun. "Hull breach in sections 4 and 6. Sealing doors now." Mitchell did not blink. "What is the status of the refugee ships?" "They are at safe distance now," said Chun. "They are beginning jump calculations." "How long?" asked Mitchell. 2 minutes, said Chun. "Maybe less if they rush it." 2 minutes. 2 minutes while the Void Devourers fired weapons that were designed to destroy worlds. 2 minutes while the Valor bled air and fire into space. The third Void Devourer ship began moving to flank the human vessel. It was a smart tactical move. The Void Devourers had superior weapons and superior numbers. They were beginning to tighten the noose, but they had not learned what humans knew. Humans knew that numbers only mattered if you let them matter. Humans knew that a small group of people who refused to break could hold against larger forces. Humans had learned these lessons on Earth, where they had fought against creatures bigger and stronger and faster than they were. Humans had learned that thinking was more powerful than strength. Mitchell turned the Valor into a maneuver that no sane pilot would attempt. He pushed the ship's heading toward the flanking Void Devourer vessel, accelerating directly toward it. The ship was putting itself in the line of fire. The bridge crew held their breath. "Captain, we cannot survive another volley at this angle," said Chun. "I know," said Mitchell. "Fire everything, now." Holloway did not question. He fired. The Valor unleashed a full broadside of missiles and railgun fire directly at the flanking ship. The weapons struck its shields and armor. One of the missiles punched through and detonated inside the ship's engine section. The Void Devourer warship fell away, damaged and unable to pursue. 2 ships now. The Valor was badly hurt, but 2 ships were better than 3. "Refugee fleet is jumping," said Chun. "They are leaving formation now." One ship flickered and vanished into hyperspace. Then another. The evacuation fleet was getting away. They were escaping the death trap that space had become. The Valor took another hit. This one was direct. The port shield collapsed completely. The explosion came through the outer hull and tore into the command center. One of the junior officers collapsed with blood running from a wound in his leg. Another officer's station erupted in flames. Mitchell did not move from his command chair. Damage report. Captain, we are venting air from 3 sections, said Chun. Her voice was shaking now, but it was still steady. It was still human. Weapon systems are at 40%. Shields are offline. We do not have armor left to give. How many ships left? Asked Mitchell. 1 more, said Chun. The last one is jumping. The last refugee ship flickered and vanished. 10,000 lives. Men and women and children. All of them escaping into space where they might survive. All of them alive because the Valor had held the line. Mitchell looked at his instruments. The Valor was broken. The shields were gone. The armor was gone. The weapons were running low on ammunition. The engines were burning at temperatures that would melt normal metal. But the refugees were safe. The refugees were alive. All hands, this is the captain, said Mitchell into the communication system. You have done your duty. You have saved lives. Whatever comes next, remember that you stood against the darkness and refused to fall. Remember that you were human. The 2 remaining Void Devourer warships circled the Valor. They were preparing for the final attack. They were preparing to finish what they had started, and then something changed. The sensors lit up with new contacts coming through jump space. More ships. More human ships. The cavalry was coming, and the Void Devourers were about to learn what it meant to face humanity at full strength. The first human warship to jump through the portal was the USS Charleston. It was a cruiser, larger than the Valor but smaller than the Void Devourer dreadnoughts. Its weapons came online immediately. Its captain was a woman named Patricia Graves, and she had been monitoring the Valor's battle across the communication network. She had seen everything. She had heard Captain Mitchell's voice as he held the line. Behind the Charleston came the USS Liberty, then the USS Dakota, then the USS New York. One by one, human warships appeared in space, engines burning bright, weapon systems hot. 6 ships total. 6 human vessels that had been answering a general distress call from across the galaxy. They had come because that was what humans did. Humans heard that their people were in danger, and they came. The Void Devourer commander knew immediately that the situation had changed. The mathematics of war had shifted against him. He was outnumbered now. The human ships were smaller and older than his own dreadnoughts, but there were enough of them. And they were moving with the kind of coordinated precision that only humans brought to combat. Captain Mitchell watched from his broken command chair. His weapons officer was still working at his station, even though blood was running down his face. His first officer was still managing the crew, even though the ship around her was dying. The humans on the Valor did not stop working because the situation was bad. Humans worked harder when things were bad. Incoming communication from the Charleston, said Chun. Captain Patricia Graves wants to speak with you. Mitchell smiled slightly. He had known Patricia for 5 years. She was a good officer and a better human being. Put her through, said Mitchell. Patricia's voice came through the speakers, clear and professional. Mitchell, you stubborn son of a bitch. You started a fight without calling for backup? I was not planning on being rescued, said Mitchell. Just buying time. Well, you bought enough time for us to get here, said Patricia. We are taking up firing positions now. Hold what you have. We will drive them off. The human fleet moved into formation. It was a beautiful and terrible thing to watch. The 6 ships created a wall of firepower that began to close in on the 2 remaining Void Devourer warships. The aliens tried to break through the line. They fired weapons that had power enough to crack continents. But humans had learned long ago how to dodge what they could not block. The USS New York took a hit that shattered its shields. The Charleston returned fire with a barrage of missiles that crippled the engines of the Lid Void Devourer ship. The USS Liberty locked onto the second enemy vessel and began driving it back with wave after wave of weapons fire. The Void Devourers were superior in power, but they were not superior in numbers anymore. They were not superior in position. They were not superior in the willingness to die for what they believed in. And they were not prepared for humans who would fight without fear. The lead Void Devourer ship jumped to hyperspace. It was too damaged to continue fighting. The second ship tried to break through the human line, hoping to escape. But Patricia had already calculated this move. The USS Dakota intercepted the enemy vessel, ramming its shields and firing everything at point-blank range. The Void Devourer warship fell away, crippled and burning. Then there was silence. The Void Devourers were gone. The remaining enemy ships had fled into hyperspace. The battle was over. The humans had won. Mitchell allowed himself to lean back in his chair. His crew on the bridge was celebrating quietly. They understood that celebration was not appropriate yet. There was too much damage. Too many people were hurt or dead. But they had done it. They had held the line. They had saved thousands of lives. Patricia's voice came through again. Medical teams are standing by. We are sending shuttles to pick up casualties. How bad is it over there, Aaron? Mitchell looked at his instruments. We have structural damage in 7 sections. Hull breaches in 4 compartments. Weapon systems at 30%. Engines are burning. We have casualties, but the ship is still flying. That is all that matters, said Patricia. Linda Ross is going to need to perform a miracle in that engine room of yours. But if anyone can do it, it is her. In the engine room, Linda Ross was indeed performing miracles. The engines had been pushed beyond their breaking point. The cooling systems had failed 3 times, and she had rerouted power manually each time. Her hands were burned from touching overheated panels. Her uniform was soaked with sweat. But she kept working. Captain, the engines are about to fail completely, she said into the intercom. We need to shut down to safe levels immediately. Bring them to safe levels, said Mitchell. Well done, Linda. You did good work today. The Valor's engines powered down. The ship's acceleration slowed. But the old destroyer was still flying. It was broken and bleeding and hurt, but it was still flying. Captain Patricia Graves coordinated the rescue operation from the Charleston. Medical teams moved between ships, bringing the wounded and the dead back to proper medical facilities. 43 crew members of the Valor had died. 43 humans who had volunteered to stand in the darkness and refused to let it win. Mitchell had requested that their bodies be treated with respect, that their names be recorded, that their families on Earth be told what they had done. Patricia had agreed immediately. This was the human way. This was how humans honored their dead dot as the sun dipped below the horizon of a distant planet. The human fleet stood together in space. 6 ships surrounded the broken Valor, making sure that nothing else could harm it. 6 ships of humans who had come because one ship had called. 6 ships that represented the future of humanity among the stars. The refugees on the Nova. Spirit received the news that they were safe. They received the news that human ships had come. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. Some of them simply sat and understood that they would live to see another day. And in her medical chamber aboard the Charleston, a young girl named Sophie received the news that she would not be alone. A human society would take care of her. Humans would make sure she was safe. Humans would make sure she had a chance to grow up and become something great, because that was what humans did. Humans took care of their own. Humans took care of people they had never met. Humans stood between the darkness and the light, and they refused to let the darkness win. 3 weeks had passed since the battle. The Valor was in dry dock, being rebuilt. Entire sections had to be replaced. The armor plating had been scarred beyond repair. That the ship would fly again. Linda Ross had promised it, and she never broke her promises. Captain Aaron Mitchell sat in a medical chamber on Earth, recovering from the burns and injuries he had sustained during the battle. A Krell physician named Solus was examining his wounds. The alien doctor moved with practiced efficiency, and his 4 arms worked at incredible speed. "Your species heals well," said Solus. "Your body is adapting to the trauma. You will make a full recovery." Mitchell nodded. He was thinking about the crew of the Valor. He was thinking about the 43 crew members who would never heal from anything ever again. He was thinking about the message that had come through from Captain Patricia Graves that morning. The message that had changed everything. The Krell Confederation had called for an emergency session. All the major powers in the galaxy were sending representatives. They wanted to discuss what had happened at the evacuation fleet. They wanted to understand why humans had been willing to die for a species that was not their own. They wanted to know what humans actually were. The day of the hearing arrived. Mitchell was still recovering, but he insisted on attending. They put him in a transport ship, and he flew to the Galactic Station where the Confederation Council met. It was a massive structure, built over thousands of years by dozens of different species. It represented the combined power and knowledge of the galactic civilization. The council chamber was circular and huge. Rows of seats rose in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 100 different species sat in those seats. Some were biological. Some were mechanical. Some existed in forms that humans did not even have names for. And all of them were looking at Captain Mitchell as he stepped onto the platform. Commander Kayla Harris was there too. She stood to the side of the platform, ready to translate or explain if necessary. She had become an advocate for humans after the battle. She had shown the council recordings of what had happened. She had tried to explain something that most aliens did not understand. The chief of the Krell Council stood up. His name was Torvin, and he had been serving the Confederation for 400 years. His voice was grave and resonant. "Captain Mitchell," said Torvin, "you are a human. Your species has been part of the galactic community for only 50 years. Yet you threw away the only warship humanity had in this region of space. You risked the lives of your crew. You fought against impossible odds. Why did you do this thing?" Mitchell took a breath. He was in pain, and his voice was rough, but he spoke clearly. "Because they needed help," said Mitchell. "Because 10,000 people were about to die. Because that is what humans do. We help people who need help. We stand between the hunters and the prey. We refuse to let the darkness take what it has not already won." A Talash representative stood up. The Talash were warriors, bred for combat and honor. You sacrificed your ship. You sacrificed your crew. You sacrificed everything for strangers. This is not logical. "No," said Mitchell. "It is not logical. It is human. Humans are not logical. Humans are something else. Humans decide to do the right thing, and then we do it, even when the right thing is expensive. Even when the right thing costs everything." Kayla spoke then. She spoke from her place beside the platform, and her voice was strong. "I have served the Krell Confederation for 20 years, she said. "I have served as a liaison to human affairs for only 3 weeks. But in those 3 weeks, I have learned something that I should have learned a long time ago. Humans are not a minor species that we tolerate because they might become useful someday. Humans are something we need. Humans are the ones who do the things that need to be done when the cost is too high for anyone else to pay. Torvin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. It was not the voice of a judge or a bureaucrat. It was the voice of someone who had finally understood something important. The Krell Confederation votes to grant humanity full equal status among the galactic powers, said Torvin. We also vote to establish a formal alliance with the planet Earth. Humanity has proven itself worthy of trust. Humanity has proven that it has something rare in the galaxy. Humanity has proven that it has heart. The council erupted into discussions. Some species agreed. Some debated. But the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity was being accepted into the galactic community as a true equal. 3 months later, Captain Mitchell stood on the observation deck of a new flagship. The Earth had dedicated resources to building a proper battle fleet, and Mitchell had been chosen to command it. The new ship was called the USS Covenant, and it carried the hopes of every human who had ever dreamed of sailing among the stars. Kayla Harris had requested a permanent position as human liaison to the Galactic Council. She would be the voice of humanity in the chambers where the future of the galaxy was decided. And she would never forget the day when one human warship had emerged from the void and changed everything below on Earth. In a quiet city, a young girl named Sophie was learning to read. She had a new family now. They had taken her in and made her part of their home. She would grow up knowing that humans saved lives. She would grow up knowing that humans stood for something. She would grow up knowing that when the darkness came, humans would stand in front of it and refuse to move on in the void of space. The USS Valor was returning to duty. It had been repaired and rebuilt. Its crew had been honored and remembered. And when it launched from the dry dock for the first time, Captain Patricia Graves took the controls herself. She took the broken old ship that had saved 10,000 lives, and she flew it out among the stars. The Valor would continue to patrol the galaxy. It would continue to answer distress calls. It would continue to do what humans had learned to do. The Valor would stand between the hunters and the prey. The Valor would refuse to let the darkness take what it had not already won. And everywhere in the galaxy, whenever an alien species heard the name USS Valor, they would remember. They would remember that humans were the ones who would stand alone against the night. They would remember that humans would not abandon people who needed help. They would remember that humans had emerged from the void, and in that moment, everything had changed. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars. Not as a minor species trying to survive, but as a force that would shape the future, as a force that would protect the innocent, as a force that would never abandon the people who needed them. All hope had been lost. Then a human warship emerged from the void, and the galaxy learned what it meant to truly understand the power of the human heart.